But the source of Parnasa comes from God, channeled through the face of the ox. And so when they looked at the options of the four faces of the angels, they said they needed the face of the ox because they needed Parnasa. They needed a livelihood. In a desert, there's no crops growing. I don't know if you've ever been in a desert. No rainfall. No way. You can put some seeds into the Sahara Desert and it's going to go ahead and sprout. And so the calf was symbol of a channel, a symbol of the divine angel through which the process of Parnasa would be channeled in a more easily acquired pattern. By having the channel, you get it easier than if you don't have a channel. And so that's what they thought. They thought they could make an icon which would be symbolic and sort of be like a seed that would stimulate that process and have that process accelerated, coming down to us at a time when we needed Parnasa, we needed our livelihood immediately. What's the problem with that? What's wrong with that? What's wrong with all three approaches? Well, the first is easy. God doesn't have any underlings. The stars and the moon and the sun, these are like instruments, like a hatchet that the woodsman uses to chop trees. You don't show any deference, any appreciation to the axe. You say, oh, thank you, axe, for being such a good axe and cutting down this tree so that we can have wood for the winter. You thank the woodsman. You pay him his fee. The same thing is true with partners. There are no partners to God. God doesn't need any partners. He controls everything. So what about parents? Yeah, God gives parents the commandment to have children. They're the partner, so to speak, has free choice in the process of bearing a child. They have to agree to have a child together. But that's in this world, in the physical world, where God gives us our ability to choose and to follow a certain path. But everything else, all the forces in the world, they're not God's partners. They don't have choices. The sun does not choose to rise in the east and set in the west. That's the way God made it. That's its nature. It must follow that nature. It has no choice in the process. It has no choice in shining. And therefore, all of the stars and the moon and the planets have no choice. They're not God's partners either. So what are the concept of channeling? Even though in the Kabbalah it says that by focusing on names of God, you can channel the blessings much easier, those are only with respect to names of God. When you're dealing with an image, and the image represents a channel, and this channel is not seen as God, then this is a subtle form of idol worship. What are the implications as far as the Torah are concerned? In the first instance, they worship the stars as if the stars were independent, that they had their own ability to create their own rules. They had the ability to deal with people and things as they saw fit. What is the parallel in Torah study. The parallel in Torah study is as follows. There are people who believe the Torah is a grid, it's a paradigm for a better life, for a life of kindness and compassion and justice. But we can add what we want. We can add to this, or we can initiate new things the way we see them. And unless God intervenes, and unless God says, I don't agree, that becomes a law. The second approach, God's got partners. Partners cannot create their own rules unless God would intervene. Partners have to have the rules validated, but they can initiate. And since they can initiate, well, you can initiate all kinds of things. Sharon Strassfeld, about 25 years ago, initiated the concept of Brit Rechitza, the covenant of washing of the feet for the little girl. That this is the new form of Brit, new form of covenant, like the circumcision of a boy, the covenant with a girl. She started it herself. She initiated it. And unless God comes along and this is it, God has to validate it. Well, it's been validated supposedly by the congregations. And the congregations have been given supposedly the ability to act on God's behalf. Since God doesn't get involved directly, we can act on God's behalf, and we can set up a ritual committee and they'll decide what to do, what is correct procedure, what is incorrect procedure. It's also distasteful, because what that's saying is that we can add to the Torah at our initiative unless God objects. Every synagogue can create its own Torah, its own version of what we're supposed to do. Third approach is a lot more subtle. Third approach is these are just a channel for God. We know it comes from God. We're just creating a system of channeling, of suggesting. It's like you put a seed in the ground and the seed will grow according to the nature of that seed. But the power comes from the ability of the earth to cause sprouting. We're just channeling that sprouting in a certain way. So too, there's the power of God, and we're just channeling that power of God that's all around us. What that means is we can direct how God wants to support his world. We can direct that somehow. We can manipulate that with suggestion. What is it in Torah? Well, there's the law, and there's the spirit of the law that suggests the purpose of the law. And based upon that suggestion and that purpose, that definition, we then define the law to mean a certain thing and follow a certain logical procedure. And therefore, based upon that interpretation, certain things will follow that may or may not have been the intent of the Creator of the universe when God gave us those laws. For you can interpret a law and a concept out of its context and change it from one extreme to the other. And these are the three